Hello everyone, and welcome to 4 Panels, the Geek Show's dedicated comics and manga podcast. I'm your host Andrew, and as per usual, I'm joined by my co-host Rob.
Hello!
And Mick.
Hello!
So, how are we doing today, guys?
Fed. I've been fed.
Well, there's no need to show off. I've been fed too. I'm incredibly sober, considering that yesterday marked the start of pubs being open again. I'm not going near one for a good month.
Yeah, it's not pretty out there, according to a lot of people.
To be fair, we are based in Teesside. It's never pretty out there.
But yeah, God knows what kind of weird artifact this episode is going to be. Like, is this just going to be the one that the aliens listen to and go, oh, that's what happened to the previous occupants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of the morons went out and got drunk and then spread the virus even more, even though they were told not to. Right. Not to future generations of our race.
Right. That's because there were several stages of the social distancing guidelines for the pub. So when you first turned up at the pub, the guidelines were 1 metre plus. So you had to stay 1 metre away, plus take other precautions, like maybe stand another metre away, or wear a mask, or anything. But what the government failed to realise was that, A, it's really difficult to drink beer through a mask.
Yeah.
And it's also very difficult to serve beer from 2 metres away.
They also forgot the major point, which I think a police senior officer touched upon in the news today. Drunk people don't socially distance.
Well, this is it. That's because, so stage 1 of the social distancing was 1 metre plus. Stage 2 of the social distancing was 1 metre plus, but you're my best mate, so it doesn't count. And then stage 3 let's form a band.
Oh, no. Stage 3.
Anyway, enough of this. We have comics to talk about.
Okay. Yeah. We're starting at the ending. In fact, it's a very confusing title. Thanos, the Infinity Ending, is our first comic, which is, maybe it's serendipity that this is at the beginning, because the title, as you said, Mick, it makes no sense.
I mean, if there's one thing that is never going to have an ending, it's Infinity.
Yeah.
It's kind of if Infinity has got one defining feature, it's a lack of ending. It's almost, by definition, its function.
I mean, look, I've spent all week watching highly complex German time travel drama Dark, and that still doesn't make any sense to me.
So, anyway, Thanos Infinity Ending is a bit like what you've just said, Andrew. It makes no sense. Unless you've read the first two installments of this little Infinity Saga with the Infinity Siblings and the Infinity Conflict, then maybe you'll understand the Infinity Ending and how Infinity actually has an end, apparently, allegedly. No, it doesn't. Because they call this the Infinity Ending, even though the story just keeps going.
The Infinity Siblings? That's a big family. I mean,
one might say
they'd be able to survive just on child benefit payments.
Yeah, one might say infinite. Anyway.
I mean, you say that, they do have to fuel, like, the infinite minivan, though.
Oh, God, what happens if they go to McDonald's and they want infinite Happy Meals? Oh, right. Anyway, enough of the bad jokes. Thanos, at the beginning of this, is up against the Living Tribunal and some green guy with who literally is the epitome of the big beard in the sky, right? He is apparently the one above all, and Thanos is about to become the one above all. Meanwhile, Thanos' brother Eros, Star Fox as he's also known, do a barrel roll, is hanging out with...
Hey. Did you not say enough with the bad jokes?
Yeah, I know. I of all people are going to stick to that rule.
To be fair, Rob has got a special dispensation from that rule being his superpower.
It's not a superpower. Let's be fair, Mick.
Yeah,
it really isn't a superpower.
Damn right.
That's true. I suppose you wouldn't tell Michelangelo he couldn't sculpt, and you can't tell Rob he shouldn't make bad jokes.
Exactly. It's something intrinsic. It's built into the nature of Rob. Anyway, Eros is hanging out with Pip the Troll and Adam Warlock, who is wearing some fancy new threads and what looks like a loincloth over a pair of trousers. I'm not sure why, but he is.
Oh, I know the answer to that within the Marvel canon, and it's because Adam Warlock is the worst.
Well, Adam Warlock is wearing what looks like a loincloth complete with butt flap, and Eros is wearing what looks like just a butt flap. So anyway,
I guess that does kind of fit with his name, doesn't it?
So anyway,
I suspect they were in the pub yesterday.
They actually, there might be, but anyway, they go through this weird business where Thanos has replaced the big beard in the sky and become the big beard in the sky. So now they have to stop Thanos from being the big beard in the sky because somehow he's been forced into being the big beard in the sky, but he doesn't want to be the big beard in the sky. But I thought that was the whole point of Thanos. He always wanted to be the big beard in the sky. That was the whole point of a lot of his existence. So why doesn't he want to be the big beard in the sky anymore? It tries to explain that.
Presumably, he kind of always wanted to be the big beard in the sky because that's why he developed that big chin.
Yeah, but now that he's been forced into being the big beard in the sky, he doesn't want to be the big beard in the sky.
Oh, is he finally discovered it's actually a bit itchy?
There's just no pleasing Thanos, is there?
Exactly. Meanwhile, Eros, who miraculously has materialized a front flap as well as a butt flap, is on the run from Thanos, who is everywhere and anywhere and everyone and anyone and all things, because he is now the one above all. They're on the run, Eros and Pip the Troll, and they're trying to hide out. So Eros has the smart idea of, Pip, your legs are too short, so we're going to rip the top off this backpack and stuff you into the backpack and carry you on my back. Because that's not demeaning in any way, shape or form. Anyway, they're going along. Meanwhile, Adam Warlock has separated from Pip and Eros, and he is off doing his own thing, which is somehow doing stuff to Thanos, while Eros and Pip trip through time, and Eros keeps telling Thanos, I love you, you're my brother. You're my brother.
No, I think you were right the first time.
And I'm like,
you're my brother.
So hold on, Pip the Troll is now in the backpack.
Yes.
So presumably he ain't heavy and he's not his brother.
Exactly. Meanwhile, you've got Thanos, who is, he's trying to be in control but not in control, but be in control and not in control, and everything is going weird. Adam Warlock ends up having to fight multiple versions of himself and somehow ends up getting the soul gem back from one of the versions of himself. And I'm like, what? Why? And he's saying, well, we have to take this risk. And they're all saying, no, but if you die, we all die as well. And I'm like, I really don't understand. Why are you all... what? This is written by Jim Starlin, and it's got art by Alan Davies. Not that Alan Davies. Let me just be clear.
Okay.
I thought I should specify.
Oh, wait, you mean not British comedian Alan Davies, but yes, comics Alan Davies.
Yes. I thought I should point that out since we all watch QI, or have watched QI, I should say. And it's got...
Alan Davies is also a very famous comics illustrator.
Yeah. It's got inks by Mark Farmer and colours by Jim Campbell, letters by VC's Clayton Cowles. And I'll be honest, this is one of those stories where it's kind of a throwback to the stories you used to get in like the 70s and 80s, when they put a lot of imagination into the cosmic stuff because they didn't really understand how the universe worked and quantum was still just kind of a thing on the horizon.
Or indeed what the word infinity meant.
Yeah. And so this is kind of a throwback to that, to like proper imaginative sci-fi balderdash. That's the only word I can use. This is pure sci-fi.
Imaginative.
Yeah.
After we take a little puff on the imagination pipe.
That's why I called it balderdash, because balderdash is the only word you're allowed to use after you've taken a puff on the magic pipe. So, yeah.
much like those comics, this one has Adam Warlock in it, so I don't care about it.
See, Adam Warlock is... I don't know whether I like Adam Warlock or I hate him. What I do know is that he has... The expression on his face at the end of this comic makes me think, you're a smug so-and-so. If I see your face, I'm going to punch you in the balls. Because he literally has, like, the smuggest look on any comic book character's face I've seen.
He's such a smug turd. Especially for a man whose costume for, like, several years consisted of underpants.
Yep. Oh, no,
and not even like Superman-style underpants on the outside. Just underpants.
Yep.
You're not Namor the Submariner, Adam Warlock. Dumb nerd.
Yeah. He has expanded his wardrobe to include
bowl cut.
To include a loincloth and a butt flap. So anyway, Andrew, the Infinity ending has ended. Things are going to change in the Marvel universe, or have changed, or will change, or maybe they won't change.
Yeah, I think maybe not change, because maybe this is also like a completely separate reality, I think, is the point of those books.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Have changed, will change, maybe won't change. Is it really that important? No. The artwork was great. The storyline, if you've had a few drinks, maybe, had something extra, maybe you'll understand the story. I certainly didn't. Not for everyone, I'd say. Yeah.
And again, not for me, because Adam Warlock is a big dummy and I hate him. Do you know who I don't hate?
Who's that?
Who don't
Spider-Man.
you hate?
Spider-Man.
There's got to be one version of Spider-Man that you hate.
Man, probably.
I reckon it's the Norman Osborn Spider-Man.
I mean, he does have a cool helmet with lots of different eyes on it.
And he does have multiple arms. But it's Norman Osborn, and he's generally a poopy head.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think that if there's any like version of Spider-Man that I'd legitimately dislike, because I am apparently like a toddler and get distracted by anything shiny or different from what I'm talking about, which is Spidey School's Out, the Marvel series by John Barber, with art by Todd Nauck, colours by Rochelle Rosenberg, and that is by Comicraft's Jimmy Betancourt. So this is like the Infinity Whatevers. I think this is another one where it's just off in its own little universe.
Okay.
So it's continuing the Spidey series that Marvel have been doing, where it's kind of Spider-Man, but Peter Parker is still a teenager in school and just having some fun, I think slightly more family-friendly adventures. Like, not that, normal comics have always necessarily gritty, adults only, you must be this high to go on this ride. But I think the Spidey series is more kind of focused on younger readers. It's it's a bit more of a simplistic plot. It's not got a lot of continuity to it. And anyway, this series sees Peter Parker get invited to the Stark summer camp, which is kind of like a big sciencey summer camp thing that Tony Stark does. He assumes because Tony knows he's Spider-Man. And again, this is another one of those things where it's maybe for younger readers, because for anyone else, it's very obvious within like 2 pages that no, the big twist is going to be that he didn't get in because he's Spider-Man. He got in because he's Peter Parker. And he's just that gosh darn smart and he needs to believe in himself. But yeah, while he's there, meets a couple of characters, and it's weird who he meets, because this series is also very clearly quite heavily inspired by the MCU, and specifically Spider-Man Homecoming. So he meets like Ganke Lee, who is Miles Morales' best friend in his comic series, who is also the inspiration for Ned in the Spider-Man films. So it's the Ganke who is Ned, who is Ganke. And then also Gigi, who I believe is like a fairly obscure Spider-Man character called Glory Grant, but in this she's also very clearly MJ from those films. So it does seem a little bit weirdly shoehorned, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, Peter's there. He's doing science. he's having typical Parker look, and it turns out when you first got your invitation to start summer camp several months beforehand, you're supposed to start working on your final project then and have it basically ready to go. And oh no, Peter, he's not got his final project ready, and people think he's a flake because he has to keep running off to do Spider-Man stuff. So, it's your classic Spider-Man trying to balance the double life drama. And he's also got to deal with the Shocker and the Vulture, who are trying to steal Stark technology from the Expo for their own nefarious means.
Dun, dun, dun.
Thank you, Mick.
Pleasure.
And yeah, it's a fun little comic. It's like I said, it's quite light, obviously more focused on being kid-friendly. But it's still, it's an enjoyable time. So it's the kind of thing, it's cool to have it around. So that if you maybe do have a younger relative who's kind of watched Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home, and you want to kind of get them into the comics, this is the perfect sort of thing to give to them. But I think my main complaint probably is, again, that sometimes it is a bit weird with the way it feels like it needs to tie into the MCU. Like, there's one bit where an arc reactor gets stolen from the camp, and so Tony Stark calls in one of his mates to help investigate. And who do you think that friend would be in a Spider-Man comic? That, well-beloved Spider-Man supporting character who can team up with him. Do we have any guesses?
I'm staying quiet because I don't think I know the Spider-Man universe enough.
Yeah, I was about to say, do we have any capability of naming a Spider-Man character?
Dr. Octopus?
Rhino?
I mean, both of which might make slightly more sense than, no, obviously, Tony Stark, for this kind of more just sort of corporate espionage matter, called in his good friend T'Challa, King of Wakanda, also the Black Panther.
What?
Right. Okay. I mean, if it was going to be in the I'd have gone with Black Widow, but that would have been sensible.
Yes, it is. It's almost like there were lots more characters that would have made more sense to be in this series. But Black Panther also happened to have a movie coming out at around a similar time as when this series was first published. But yeah, even by your classic, like, comic book suspension of disbelief, that one's a bit hard to swallow.
A bit like Infinity having an ending.
Yes, exactly. But no, still, there's some good stuff. There's a really good bit where you see the Rhino, who, to be fair, Rhino does appear in this series.
Okay.
He kidnaps Aunt May, and Spider-Man has to, basically just swing all the way across New York to get back to her. And, it's kind of this good Spider-Man moment of him being, exhausted. I think he says at one point his arm feels like it's about to pop out the socket. Which is also maybe a bit grisly for a kid's book, but whatever. But, he's still got to keep going. He's still got to stop the Rhino and rescue Aunt May. And I think that's just one of those classic Spider-Man tropes of him, him back up against the wall, but he's still going to keep on fighting. Also, the art I really like a lot. Todd Naoki's got a really nice cartoony style. He does a lot of covers, I know, so it's nice to see him do some interior stuff as well. There's also got some good designs as well, like the Vulture especially, I think, is a nice mix between looking like the classic comic version, whilst also incorporating some elements of Michael Keaton, by which I, of course, mean he, wears a Batman hood, and is also part of theatre. And if you say his name 3 times, he appears.
Okay.
Some of those things were lies.
No, really?
Yes. So, anyway, all that being said, I give this comic book 0 out of 10. Because he's called the Shocker because he shoots shockwaves. Not because he's electric. And I know when you say Shocker, you think of electric shocks, but that's not what he does. It's not what he does, John Barber.
Okay, so that comic has clearly triggered Andrew on a very deep and meaningful level.
Oh, Michaelmas. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. in you, and also the comic having zappy laser fists.
I mean, to be fair, you're always disappointed with me. It's kind of my superpower.
That's true. I'm glad we're kind of having this sort of affirmation of what all our roles are on the show.
I mean, one of the advantages of lockdown is that you haven't actually had the energy to fire me for months.
You're right. It's not the same when I can't do it in person.
Is it my turn?
Yep.
We should have segued at the mention of Michael Keaton, really, because I'm delving into a seldom trodden universe on 4Panel, by which I mean that I ran out of review material and had to buy some comics.
Oh, the shock, the horror.
The horror.
Oh, the humanity.
So, the one I'm covering is Harleen, which is a collection of a 3-book miniseries from DC's Black Label.
Is DC's Black Label a bit like, that Black Label that you used to see on certain shelves in the library when you were a kid?
I mean, I know in one of the series they did, Batman got his Todger out, so yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, this isn't that kind of Black Label, I'll be honest.
Also, Batman has a Bat Todger?
I mean, if he did have, he would call it that, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Also, how do you think Robin came about?
Which one?
I mean, I guess the one who's specifically his son.
All right, Damien.
You
Okay,
see, Rob,
yeah.
when a Batman loves a Talia al Ghul very much, then she steals some of his DNA and puts it in a cloning sequence.
Hang on, is that what they call it?
Genetically altered version of what their son would look.
What I love about that is everything you said there was a euphemism. Steals his DNA, puts it into a genetic cloning thing.
Yes. It's also the actual plot of how Batman's son came about now.
I know. But
because DC can't just have a child.
Yeah.
Anyway, Harleen. This is an origin story of sorts for Harley Quinn. And initially I got it because I loved the cover art, which is by Stjepan Sejic, who also wrote and drew the story as well. And the hardback edition comes in this sort of semi-transparent slipcase, which has got a picture of Harley Quinn, but the transparent bit reveals Harleen underneath, which is quite a nice little sort of visual taste of what comes throughout the graphic novel. And it's basically a romance comic of sorts, but obviously the sort of twisted kind of romance that ends up with Dr. Quinzel becoming Harley Quinn.
Yes, to quote Lady Gaga, a bad romance.
Indeed. And it's really, really gorgeously drawn. And Batman is kind of the bad guy in this, as are the GCPD and Jim Gordon, because they feature very heavily in Harleen's dreams that she starts having as she goes through this process of becoming a research psychologist studying the inmates at Arkham. And she actually sort of starts off just by talking to ordinary inmates. You know, the key one is an ex-military officer who murdered people whilst on duty and got committed to Arkham on that score, rather than a super criminal. And then she sort of gradually works her way through to interviewing people like Freeze, Penguin, Riddler, etc. And she kind of holds off on talking to Joker, but that's because she's terrified because of an encounter she has with him very early on in the story, while he's still out on the streets before he gets arrested and put in Arkham. But that's where her fascination with this character begins. She's also haunted by mistakes she made in her past at college, which relate to maybe currying favour with some of the male professors. And
does
So she's quite surprised when she gets the offer of a grant from Bruce Wayne to carry out her research. And that comes by way of Lucius Fox, who was sat at a presentation on her theory about finding out what broke these criminals in the first place, as a way to try and mend them again and get them out onto society, away from being villains. It's also coincidentally an origin story for Harvey Dent as Two-Face. And in this version, he's attacked by a construction magnate with suspected links to organised crime called Sal Maroni. And the attack on Dent triggers a quite sizable section of the GCPD to become a group called the Executioners, whom Batman deals with just as violently as he deals with the villains that they're out to attack against. This all starts tying together throughout Book 2 and 3, but Book 1 ends with her first interview with the Joker, and ends with her calling him Mr. J for the very first time. But she's still very much Harleen Quinzel at this point.
Well, that does sound interesting, because I know I'd kind of heard of Harleen, but I didn't realise it was kind of it seems like a lot bigger of a thing than I first thought. I thought it was just, quite a simple, it's just about Harley meeting the Joker, now she kind of fell in with him.
And I thought, that it was going to be a fairly sort of straight origin story kind of thing. But what's missing from here that you normally get in a Harley Quinn story is the madcap humour type thing. There is humour in here, but it's much more normal humour. It's not the sort of zany, Joker-infused style of humour. And that absolutely makes sense, because she's a psychologist.
Yeah.
She makes clever jokes. She makes a joke. And the one thing that she's trying to do throughout this, because there's a key sentence in one of the interviews she has with Joker where she gets round to asking him why on the night that they met and he held a gun at her, why he didn't pull the trigger. And his answer comes in two parts. Then he deflects with a line about being out of bullets. But the second part of his answer is, because I wondered what it would look like to see you smile. And from that point on, she refuses to smile. It goes that deep into the whole psychology until she finally cracks and smiles at him and all the rest of it. It's beautifully, beautifully executed, this story. It makes Harleen attractive and sexy, but without the sort of cheap element that a lot of depictions of Harley have done over the years.
The Little Black Book being one of them.
Yeah. This is not a slutty Harley that's,
Again, I refer to Harley's Little Black Book.
Yeah. You get to meet some of the denizens of Arkham, some of the regulars, you might call them, like Ivy.
Yeah.
Croc. Obviously Two-Face isn't in there yet, but he's probably destined to be there.
I have a question. Is Ivy actually insane? She seems, from what I see, she seems quite sane. She seems quite normal in her thinking. Yeah, okay, her thinking is crazy to us, but
the thing is, this is kind of what Harley's research is about.
Yeah.
These people aren't insane because they're capable of coming up with reasoned and logical plans.
Yeah.
To get what they want. What brands them insane is the sociopathic nature of how they interact with society.
Yeah.
And that's what she's exploring. And she starts making progress with some of them just by being that person who listens without judging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until the point where she sort of starts staying awake at night and watching Joker sleep. That's a bit weird.
Yeah, well, that's the whole case of if you stare at the abyss long enough, the abyss will stare back.
Yeah. And it's funny you should mention, because that's another beautiful line that she shares with Batman. And she said, maybe you'll find a broken man trying to climb out, which is a really nice spin on that whole idea. And, you know, when the change happens, when she finally clicks and becomes Harley, the manipulative element of the Joker has been so well concealed throughout the rest of the story that you go, oh, what? How did I miss that?
Wait a minute. The Joker was the bad guy?
The artwork is superb. It's really atmospheric. Almost reminiscent of like some Studio Ghibli anime stuff, in a way, but more westernized than that. The Nightmare Batman is just a joy. And yeah, it's just fantastic, and I hope that they've got more of these planned, because to see where this version of Harley goes now, you know, we end up just with them breaking out of Arkham. That's the end of the story. We don't go through any Ace Chemical stuff or anything like that. They haven't even started on a criminal career other than a breakout. And actually we get a kind of epilogue of sorts, which is 4 years later. But I'm really looking forward to seeing more from this version of Harley. There's some sumptuous variant cover artwork featured at the back, one of which is a definite nod to the scene in Suicide Squad where they're on date night in the car, but it's not the Jared Leto version of the Joker in the car. It's the one from this story. And there's a beautiful cover that's like a pack of playing cards, and it's got the Joker in traditional playing card Joker garb with Harley as his queen next to him, and sort of like courtiers are like Two-Face and Croc and Ivy. This guy is such a great artist. I'd love to see. I think he's done some of the standard Suicide Squad storylines, like managing people, and it was while he was working on that he got offered the chance of a miniseries. But even some of the sort of unused artwork is superb. So yeah, I can't recommend that one highly enough. Harley enough.
Oh,
hey. So that's Harleen on the DC Black Label imprint, and it's just a must-read.
Cool.
Also, I might add to that if you do like Stepdan Sajic and you are kind of a bit more internet savvy, I know we post a lot of stuff on Twitter as well. Although probably quite a lot of it is very not safe for work.
Okay, not so cool then. Anyway, speaking of good art, Saverio Tenuta, who is a name that you guys probably are familiar with, but I covered one of his graphic novels a while ago. It was the first volume of Izuna from Humanoids. And this is not volume 2 of Izuna. This is the first volume of a 4-book series that he's done called The Mask of Fudo. And this is book 1, and this is out from Humanoids. There are 4 books in this series, as I said. Now, Saverio Tenuta is a guy who is fascinated by Japanese culture and history and things like that. He's an Italian artist who has studied fine art, and it actually shows in the art style, because the art in this is really, really good.
Oh, I get what you're saying, Bob. So he's just like Akira Yoshida.
No, he's not. But the artwork is really good for a comic book. It's very, very detailed. It has a lot of expressions on the faces and things like that. The costumes, the places, everything has this level of detail that you just don't really see in comic books, especially not in superhero ones. I think that's one of the reasons why I think Humanoids has a place in the world, because they keep putting out these really interesting, really left field comics that you only get on the continent that aren't superhero stuff. Anyway, this is a story about Shinosuke, who is just a poor boy from a poor family, and he's trying to spare his life from this monstrosity, in this case his mother. He lives with his sister and his mum, and they are part of the Hinin, if I remember rightly, who are a race of Japanese who were really persecuted. His sister is out at the beach one day just gathering clams or something, and Noble turns up and decides that he wants to assault her in horrible ways. And Shinosuke turns up wearing this mask that he's found, this strange wooden mask. Stop me if you've heard this story before. He finds a strange wooden mask, and he, when he puts it on, he feels powerful, and he's able to do things that he wasn't able to do before.
And then he puts on a yellow suit and has a snog with Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, and then says, "Somebody stop me!" Well, that's not what happens here. Instead, what happens here is he feels powerful, but it's not the mask at the moment.
Oh no, it's not the son of the mask, is it?
No, it's not the son of the mask, but it might as well be. This is kind of a bloodier, more dark and sinister version of the mask. See, Shinosuke, his encounter with this noble youth, ends up with the noble youth losing his nose and running away in fear. Shinosuke is very happy. He saved his sister, only to go home and be stuffed in a barrel because his mum's upset with him because of reasons. Things happen, and eventually the war that's raging around the country as all the lords fight against each other to try and become the shogun reaches Shinosuke's village, and his sister gets taken away. So he embarks on this quest to find his sister and rescue her from wherever she's ended up. And he needs the mask to help him. The problem is that the mask will give him strength at the cost of his soul. Isn't that a bargain that we've all heard of before? See, the mask is ancient and belonged to another warrior, and you have this weird thing where there are sections where it looks like it's in the past, but it may actually be in the future. But then it may be in the past, and you're not quite sure. And I think this is something that's cleared up.
Oh, so you've been watching Dark as well?
No, I've just been reading this. This may be cleared up later on in the other books, because Shinosuke, he doesn't have power, he doesn't have skills as a samurai or anything like that. He relies on his righteousness and just sheer native strength to carry him through. But that is not something that is going to win him. It might win him a battle, but it won't win him the war. But then it carries on and carries on and carries on, and you start seeing this old man who's basically wearing like face paint that looks exactly like the mask, and you don't know if that's Shinosuke or is that someone else who goes by the name of Fudo. And that's where it gets really confusing, because the mask is the mask of Fudo. But if Shinosuke becomes Nobufudo, then there's something strange going on. But if Nobufudo is, his soul is living in the mask, then there's still something strange going on. Shinosuke's strength increases. He's able to kill people, and there is a lot of blood in this. There's a lot of people dying in this, and there are people dying in horrible ways. There are quite awful things happening, including a very brutal form of brainwashing, as Shinosuke and his friends are captured and by a guy who knows the secret of the mask and who wants the power of the mask for himself, and embarks on this trial by fire, effectively, where Shinosuke and his friends are forced to fight battle after battle after battle until they basically become killing machines. It's brutal, it's bloody, it lacks a lot of the lighter moments that made stories like Izuna a lot more palatable. And I think that's the overwhelming impression of this. And even the cover has trees dyed the colour of blood while a figure in a white and black mask leaps through with a sword in hand. It's very, very dark and depressing. It's kind of like the first time you play through Final Fantasy X, where it's all doom and gloom and death and despair, and you just think, why? Just stop now.
Are you sure you mean Final Fantasy? Because that game does have a lot of like very light, goofy moments as well. To, as you said, break up the doom and gloom.
And death and despair. Yeah, it has a lot of doom and gloom and death and despair. And I don't call Titus trying to teach Yuna how to laugh with that really fake mechanical laugh a lighter moment. That was one of the more depressing moments when I realized that video game acting was not a thing that was going to happen anytime soon.
I mean, I will stand up for that. Because the point of that scene is it's supposed to be a bad laugh. It's meant to sound like a really awkward forced laugh.
Spoken like a true fan. Anyway, Mask of Fudo.
Final Fantasy X is the best one. There, that's done it. Finally, we've shed those last few fans.
It's 4 or 6. Anyway, Mask of Fudo. If you are into your traditional samurai type stories, if you actually like stories like Lone Wolf and Cub or something like that, then this is actually worth looking at as an option. I mean, yeah, it's not manga, but it's as close to manga as you'll get in Western comics, and it's got really good art. The story itself, okay, it started off as fairly common or garden, given that it's set in Japan, and there are a lot of stories where Orphan Boy sees village destroyed and goes on a quest for revenge. That's a story that's been told to death in Japan. But it's not a bad effort at it. It's not a bad attempt at it. And it's 4 books. It'll keep you busy.
Cool.
Okay, nice stuff. So just back to me to finish off then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been reading 4, Rob. Final Fantasy IV. I mean, I like it, but the best one.
6.
6 is pretty good. 6 I can see.
I said 4 or 6.
Could I just move this conversation on, seeing as A, it's a comics podcast, and B, I've never played Final Fantasy to any great degree other than just saying, oh, what's this like? What?
I mean, in 6, a man suplexes a train, which is pretty comic books.
Yeah. You also have a clan who destroys the world, which is also a pretty comic book.
But it's not actually a comic.
Fine. An actual comic book, then, that I've been reading is also from Humanoids. It's Snow Day, which is written by Pierre Wazim, with art by Antoine Orbin. So this is set in a kind of a vague, nondescript town somewhere in the middle of America, like clearly very sort of Fargo-esque. So it's lots of snow, it's like Minnesota kind of place.
Yeah.
And the book follows a sheriff named Spencer, who has just moved to the town, which has got a very heavy mining industry. So kind of the mayor and the boss of the mining company, they're kind of thick as thieves. And it's definitely the corporation that's running the place, even though that's not always best for the people. But unfortunately, Spencer's quite a meek sheriff and is unable to do much to change that. Until one day he decides enough is enough. And actually, I like that there's kind of a recurring bit throughout the book of Spencer trying to explain his motivations by saying, like, sometimes the thermometer just gets too cold. And every time he says it, just whoever he's talking to goes, what? And he's just, never mind. So yeah, Spencer basically tries to arrest some of the miners who were, well, not the miners, and actually I say miners, I think it's a factory, not a mine. So the factory, basically, the factory boss's personal bodyguards, or as heavies, to use the correct term. So they start a bar fight, Spencer tries to arrest them, only for the mayor to, come over, literally push him to the ground and say, no, we're letting these men go now because they need to go to work. And it's just about him sort of thinking, is he going to roll over and just let things go as they were without any hassle, or is he going to kind of stick to his guns, make a scene, even though it'll mean kind of being the man of action that he's not really that kind of guy. And yeah, it's a fun enough little one-shot. I think, like quite a bit of the humanoid stuff I've read, it's one of those ones I think could use maybe like a third longer, just to sort of flesh things out a bit.
Yeah.
Especially because I know there's a lot of supporting characters, like Spencer's ex-girlfriend, who we basically don't really know much about. Like, they kind of have a sort of vague conversation about an implied past, and then she just shows up at the end to help him out. And it feels like something we could have used more of elaboration on.
Yeah.
Especially because there's a lot of scenes in this where it's kind of just wordless pictures of scenery. And they're not like a waste. I get why it is to kind of build this impression of this kind of quite bleak, desolate, very kind of quiet town. So I think you definitely need to keep those in there. but you could use some extra pages. I think my main issue, though, is the bit that I think does make the series ultimately fall a bit flat, is Antoine Aubin's art does just feel a bit unfinished. Like, they tried to go for kind of black and white, obviously because, it's a snowy town, so lack of colour sort of emphasised the whiteness of the snow. But I think it could maybe do with a bit more shading, maybe some kind of heavier shadows, because at the moment it looks a bit unfinished.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And it doesn't quite build the atmosphere I think it's going for. Like, it's very, looking at it, it's very clearly inspired by Hergé, Tintin stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's trying to capture that kind of similar look and sort of, slightly atmospheric, quite pulp adventure-y feel. And it just doesn't quite hit that for me.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you mean. I've read a few comics like that where the artwork didn't quite match up to the actual story.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, I think I should point out that this apparently was literally Antoine Aubin's first, professional work. So I think it is just one of those things where maybe needs a bit more practice to really kind of get his style down.
Yeah.
He's no Steven Sedgwick, that's his name now.
Do you mean Stjepan Sedgwick?
No, Stephen Sedgeworth. There we go.
Stephen Sedgwick.
Yeah. Just like some kind of awful old-timey immigration officer, I've given him a new name.
Why don't you just go the whole hog and just call him Stedgwick? There you go.
I mean, it's easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, Stepjan Sajic. There we go.
I've just found out that there is a sequel to Harleen and it's available on my Kindle.
Oh, hurrah. We've been John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake's Spectre series. It's weird, I
read Doomsday Clock recently.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, to be fair, at least you read it now and not when it was coming out, with, several month gaps between each issue.
Yeah.
No, I read it in collected editions.
Do you know what my favourite thing about Doomsday Clock is?
It ended?
That the entirety of the Watchmen TV series came out in between issues of it.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Doomsday Clock was, I suppose from a certain perspective you could say the original idea of it was good, but man, it lost a lot in translation.
It really did.
From idea to actual end result, there was so much gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like part of the problem is that it's two good ideas for two completely different comic books awkwardly mashed together.
Yeah. Which is why you ended up with so much missing.
Oh, well.
Anyway, on that note, I think it's time for us to go. So, Andrew.
Yeah, it is the end of the show.
But, hold on. So, the show's going to have an ending?
Yes.
You see, I think we should go Maverick. If Infinity's got an ending, which it shouldn't have, we should just go on forever.
No, because...
Oh my god, yes, I love it. What we do is we all get headsets now, and we put them on, and just from now on, everything we do, we constantly narrate.
Yes.
Are you sure about that, Andrew?
Yes. Get ready, listeners.
I want you to think about what you just said, right? Really think about it, and then tell me again that you're absolutely sure about this.
I mean, I think the important thing is, Rob, I'm not the one who edits the show.
And the other thing is, we can rebrand it as Being 4-Panel.
Oh.
Or what we could do is we could all just step away from our headsets and just leave it recording.
Now, because I've got a power save function on this, it'll eventually turn itself off. Anyway, Andrew.
Yes, so joking aside, we are at the end of the show. If you have liked what you've heard, you can find more of us at thegeekshow.co.uk or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, thanks again to Turnaround Books for providing, most of the review material this week. And if you are a fan of the show, you can help us out by either leaving us a review on either iTunes or your app of choice, or just recommending us to a friend. It is the best way to help us grow. reach new ears, expand our horizons.
Or send us sandwiches.
Actually, yeah, send us sandwiches. I like sandwiches.
Sandwiches are good.
Although, do I like sandwiches enough to eat mysterious sandwiches I receive in the post?
Well, there's one way to test that theory.
Anyway, until next time, I've been Andrew.
I've been Rob.
And I've been Mick.
So long and thanks for listening.